G'day, fans, and welcome back to another exciting Monday night. And how cool is this? The weather is slowly starting to cool down now. Now you can bring out your winter woolies. And the coolest thing that I've seen tonight so far is the fact that Sarah is sitting there with a completely black background, gone the full gothic, totally mysterious look. What is the deal with that? Sarah, what's the go?
I thought that for a change, I'd come to you from the void rather than my house. So I hope you enjoy this presentation from the void.
Absolutely fantastic. So instead of people looking around the background, looking, oh, look at this, look at that, look at that, look at just everything is all focused towards you, which is
Yep.
absolutely
I
spectacular.
am the beacon.
Yeah,
Just pay attention to me. It is fine.
which is kind of funny because normally in these sort of programs, people have all this crap in the background and people are looking in the background. And we are talking about collectibles tonight, funnily enough. And I have known people to sort of sit and in front of all their collections, and people look in the background. Oh, he's got one of those, and then she's got one of those, one of those, one of those. But tonight, all we got is nothing. You got yourself a little Grogu, and that's it. Is that right?
I can bring props. I've got props around me, so I can do it that way. If what I'm saying is not interesting enough, I'll just bring Grogu
Absolutely
in.
fantastic. I love that. From Aaron said, you're coming from via the void. Magnificent. And Aaron, of course, is going to be very intrigued by this discussion because he's the collector dude extraordinaire, which actually brings us to what it is we're talking about tonight, which, of course, is collect them all. A look at pop culture collecting, which, of course, is an industry that's been around for thousands and billions of years. Everybody loves buying stuff. You like buying stuff. I used to love buying stuff. But it is a good industry. It's a wonderful hobby, but of course, it does have a dark side to it. And I guess that's what we're going to be looking at a bit tonight. But before we get too excited, apparently you've got some sticks. Now, we want to see what you've got. So I'm going to show you some pictures. So what have you got buried away in your abode?
I have stuff. I just have lots and lots of stuff. I tend to collect on specific topics, genres, things that just look nice on a shelf. So this particular collection is my current Harry Potter shelf. I do have other stuff, but it is the stuff that is nicely put together. I've got a few different things there. Right at the front, you've got glasses from the IMAX screening of Deathly Hallows Part 2 that was given out to people at that IMAX screening. I wasn't there, so I had to get it elsewhere. We've got Time Turner, Harry Potter the exhibition that was an exhibit in Sydney. We've got the guide for that, some pop vinyls, some playing cards from the original when the game, sorry, not the game, when the movies first got announced, before they actually had anyone cast. There was a little while there where they were just making merch, but they had nothing to go on except the art on the book covers. So I've got a deck of playing cards that's all different images from that particular era. I like that particular era. Don't have as much to show for it, but it is one of my favorite little parts. Then on to my other things. I've got Little Mermaid, one of my favorite movies, childhood favorite movie. So I've got a little collection of things there. We've got the giant pop Ursula. Rod, my partner, made fun of me a lot for every time I would see an Ursula in store when they first launched. I would say, no, the paint job's not good enough. I'll get it another time. And eventually they discontinued that particular pop. And lo and behold, it is now worth hundreds of dollars. I think it went up to thousands at one point. It's one of the rarest pops. So when they re-released it in a giant version, I snapped that up instead. And then just a bunch of other Little Mermaid things, including a music box I got at Disneyland and some Hallmark ornaments, as well as a Q posket, which I have quite a few of at this point. Then on to one of my other little focus collections is Loki and Amora, so characters from Thor, the comics and the movies and the TV shows. Amora, yes, Aaron, I'm sorry, I do collect pops. So Amora is one of my favorite characters from comic books. Unfortunately, we haven't seen her on screen yet, though they've kind of done that with Sylvie, who is half the Enchantress and half Loki, and then a bunch of other Loki stuff. Moving on, we've got my Labyrinth section, which just a bunch of stuff from the movie Labyrinth, mainly pops at this point, but there's some other stuff I haven't put in there. Tend to be out of date collecting cabinets, and as I think you all will know, you're not truly a collector if half your collection isn't in boxes. Then, of course, we've got the embarrassing section of pops. If you look very closely at this photo, you will see that the pops are actually stacked in multiple depths. So I have about 3 times the pops that fit in that cabinet. I don't know where to put them, and I don't know what to do with them, but I just keep accumulating more. Next little collection, I've got a couple of Hot Toys, got a couple more which aren't currently on display, which I need to get out, working to have a full line of Avengers. Then we have Peggy Carter, one of my other favorite characters that I have a little focus of, one of my characters that I cosplay. I've got a collection there, including some lipstick that was screen accurate lipstick to the show, a signed autograph from Hayley Atwell, a selection of pop vinyls. They've just released a bunch more with the advent of the What If Captain Carter, and also a bunch of other things, including a little replica of the compass that Steve Rogers takes with him, the image of Peggy, which my partner lovingly made. Then, of course, Ahsoka, one of my other favorite characters. I have a few favorite characters, in case you can't tell. Ahsoka, I do have a lot more stuff for her that I haven't found a place for yet, including some statues. But that's my just a little selection of what I've got. And then we've also got Mass Effect, one of my favorite games. So some Mass Effect merchandise there. Got the Tali of Vas Normandy. In the background, we've got some Garrus, and I think I've got PB and Sarah Ryder, which was from the much maligned Mass Effect Andromeda, as well as a replica of, I've temporarily forgotten what it's called, but it is the weapon that goes on it's a energy weapon that they wear in Mass Effect. Then I've got a Mass Effect Omnibus, so some just comics there, and a bunch of little figures as well. And this here is my collection of MISC. This was at one point organized, but as more and more stuff comes into the house, less and less is visible. At the top, it was at one point a Carol Danvers Captain Marvel focus. At the moment, it is just overtaken with various Marvel figures. Down the middle, you've got my Q Poskets. I will show you those. Q Poskets are currently one of the things that I am collecting quite a bit of, but my focus is Disney princesses, or Disney women, as they're not all princesses. But so that's that, and that's what I've got to show for you today.
We've got a question that came through a bit earlier. Christy asked what the book was on the Labyrinth shelf.
Yes, let me go back to that. Sorry. I've forgotten what it's called. I've got 2 there. So I've got the Goblin Companion, which is a little book of Froud illustrations and things like that, from when the book first came out. I was gifted that one very, very kindly by Aaron, actually. And in the background, the other book there, that is the Labyrinth children's book. It is a labyrinth, like just sort of like a little golden book, but labyrinth. And 2 of my favorites. Yeah.
Well done. I like this one for Michael. Yeah, don't mention pops to me because I can't stand them. But, each their own. And fortunately, I'm not the only person who thinks that way, which is all pretty good. And in fact, with that in mind, the Vile he suggested whether he should do a pop of you. Now, for those who have no idea what we're talking about, in our series Rip Off the Card, the Vile has been making replica pops of the hosts of that show, which has been a bit of a worry. Hang on, I haven't read all this. The Vile has said, Sarah, have you been seeing fans New Hope, the doco at San Diego Comic-Con where fans create a massive film effect? I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to mean. Can you decipher all that?
No. I haven't seen that, no, but I'm definitely going to look into that after this.
Very good. So do you find that there's a situation, like you've obviously, as was mentioned, you're a focus collector, which is, I agree with Rod, is actually a really, really good thing. It's way too hard now to just buy everything of a franchise. And a lot of people have tried that and failed because it is just so difficult. And some franchises have a lot of merchandise and some don't have much at all. But from your perspective, do you find that being a focus collector is actually like it works for you both, not just in the space that you have, but the budget as well, and the fact that some items will come out, then there won't be anything for a long time, and then the other things will come out? Does that sort of work for you?
Look, it's one of those things. Collecting's always a dangerous hobby. There will always be times that something you've been looking for ages shows up, and you just happen to have the money on you, and you really shouldn't be buying that particular thing, but it's right there, and it's beautiful. Look, with my particular collecting, because I just really do focus on what I like. So early on, yeah, as you said, I could go out there and buy every single pop from a line. You know, when they make a new movie that I like, I could buy every pop from the line. But very early on, I realized that that's not very space efficient, and B, they don't hold value, pops in particular. So it's not exactly an investment collection. And C, just yeah, where do you put them? I don't know if I repeated myself. I had 3 points, but I don't know if I've said the right ones or not. So it's fine.
All right. So Rod has made a mention about the smart collector has self-imposed limitations. That actually brings up a very interesting point. You might have self-imposed limitations. I get that, but it sort of brings up that question of as to whether there's a two-pronged question to this, whether you can actually have too much merchandise produced for something. So, for example, if you like, I think you mentioned Little Mermaid, for example. Now, I actually knew a lady who was collecting Little Mermaid stuff back in the 1990s, right? And it obviously comes out in dribs and drabs. Obviously, when the movie came out, there's a fair bit, and you've obviously got your bits and pieces too. But do you find, say, if you were collecting Little Mermaid, still really into it, that if they kept producing more and more material for it, even if there's not really a market for it, would you find that you're thinking, okay, I'm now starting to be exploited a little bit because the people who make this stuff know that, like you, for example, will go out and buy it, even if you don't necessarily want it? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Look, so you mentioned Little Mermaid as an example. The one good thing about Little Mermaid stuff is most Disney merchandise is for children. There are things that are for adults as well. There are the collector pieces, like some of what I've got, but a lot of it is for children. And for that reason, it feels slightly less exploitative than, say, when the new, Disney Plus series comes out and everyone's obsessed with it and they put some merch out at the start. So a good example would be my dear friend here, Grogu. I have a couple of Grogu figures, but I am now at the point where they have oversaturated the market to the point that I'm no longer wanting to collect stuff with Grogu unless it's very, very cute, because there's just so much of it. And it is off-putting when there is just, you walk into a store and you just see, basically clearance shelf after clearance shelf of stuff that has been made, and none of it's really made. Sometimes you can tell when things are made with love, and you can tell when things are made just to put more stuff on the market. And when it gets to the point that it's just more stuff on the market so people will buy things that can't say no, that's not for me. It's something that I'm not a particular fan of.
That actually puts it down to what Ads has said here about quality over quantity. And that's, of course, a big issue for a lot of people where they go for the numbers rather than the quality. But it sounds like you've got that kind of all figured out, which is kind of good because I've got a friend of mine. He has a Royal Guard collection from Star Wars, right? And because the Royal Guard was the red robe dude. And there's not a lot of stuff available for the Royal Guard, but whenever something does pop up, he'll grab it. Now, fortunately, there's not a lot. He's got it all in one glass cabinet. It looks really, really schmick. But if a merchandiser, someone who produced this stuff, was aware of that, they might go, well, let's just pump out like 15,000 different Royal Guard varieties because they know that someone like him would be obligated to buy it. Whereas in your case, you've obviously realized, oh, okay, I don't need to have everything that's coming out. And I reckon that's actually a very, very smart way of doing things. So, well done to you.
I try.
Hang on. I like this one. Yeah, the biggest danger is that people will buy other things in a series because they assume you like it all. Well, that's the thing, because it's a very fine line between what's produced and what will sell. And as it turns out, there are some franchises, and we've discussed this on another show with Aaron and myself, where the franchises are gigantic. Things like, massively successful, like Lord of the Rings, and as you mentioned, like Harry Potter. But the merchandise really doesn't sell. There's no demand for it. It's not like it occupies, shelf after shelf after shelf in those toy stores. And I know you've got a bit of a Harry Potter collection. Did you find that to be the case? You go, I'm all excited about it, but I just can't find anything, or what I find is just not that good. Did you experience that yourself in your travels?
Yeah, look, I would say to an extent, yes. There's nothing more depressing than when you have money to spend and you want to buy things, but then you go to look at the stuff that's available and it's just all garbage. It's just poorly made, cheaply produced, and not made with any care or love. It's just merch for the sake of merchandise. And that, to me, that's off-putting. It's not something that I'm a particular fan of. There are particular franchises where just because there is stuff doesn't mean I'm going to buy it. So, example, again, going to go back to pop vinyls. I know. I'm sorry, Dags. But I have a lot. But nowadays I'll go into an EB Games or a Zing, and they have a literal wall of pop vinyls, and it is just so many. And some of them are just so pumped out. They're not good molds. They're just lazily put together. And you just look at them and you just think, I don't want any of them now. I kind of want to sell the ones I've got at home. There's just too many. It's just, yeah, not great.
Yeah, it can be a frustrating sort of thing, and I've seen a lot of stories with a lot of people, and some of them have been good, some of them not so good. I like this one from Aaron. It's a bit of a long comment, but about the big idiot rule. In other words, if he's dumb enough to pay a stupid price for something, then there's always a chance that someone else will pay even more for it down the track. It's interesting sort of philosophy. You do wonder, like, but if you're the idiot at the start who's paid a fortune for some items, and there are some things that you scratch your head over. Now, on the other show that we do on Wednesday nights, we have our what we call the eBay section, where we actually look at items that sold on eBay and what prices they went for. And of course, a lot of people scratch their heads going, who would pay that much for this? And I do think there is a big issue of things that are in vogue at the time. There's a big example of that. So something will come out, a movie, a TV series, whatever. Merchandise is produced for it. Everybody just jumps on it. Suddenly there's this massive demand of selling all the stuff left, right, and center. And then virtually overnight, it becomes worthless and nobody wants it anymore. The problem is, and you think people would learn from that, but it happens again and again and again and again. And have you come across that in your travels where you're thinking, why are people paying this much for this when they just got to wait a year and they'll be like throwing them out in the bargain bins?
Look, it's one of those things where there's that big old feeling of FOMO, so that fear of missing out. That is the thing that, that's the thing that sells toys. That's the thing that sells collectibles. That's the thing that makes people buy things that they don't need. That fear that when you go back, it won't be there anymore and you won't be able to get it. I'm sorry, I have blanked on the question.
It's all right. Don't stress. I've actually forgotten what the question was too. Rod's come up with a really good point, and I mean, no greater market flood than that's the Phantom Menace, by the way, not episode 1 of this show. And I was having a discussion with someone recently about how the whole merchandising collectible thing has worked, and there was a lot of companies that got damaged badly by what happened with the Phantom Menace. So for those who didn't put 2 and 2 together, obviously the Star Wars franchise was gigantic in the 80s in terms of the collectability market. It happened again in the 90s, and when the announcement of the Phantom Menace, just about everybody who could produce anything jumped on board to buy or produce merchandise for Phantom Menace, and it just died a massive death. I can't even begin to imagine the amount of merchandising companies that went under because of that. And for that reason, a lot of companies now are very selective as to what they produce, which means sometimes you can have a great movie, TV series, and there's no products for it at all because they're still burnt from what happened back in 1999. So for someone like myself, you have to mention Captain Carter. What's her name? Agent Carter. Did you find, you go, okay, awesome. I love this character. I love this show. I want to go and get some stuff, but nothing is produced for it or very, very little. Is that the kind of thing that would frustrate you?
It does and did at the start. So Agent Carter, the TV show, when that first came out, Peggy Carter, there was a not much merch. There was very little produced. We were very lucky that there was a community of women that were very interested in cosplaying Agent Carter. And because of that, we ended up with some incredible merchandise. But it was pretty much somebody at a company loved the project and realized if we make this, it will sell. So there's a makeup company, Besame, who made an entire collection of, they did the makeup for the show. They focus on era specific makeup, so retro and vintage inspired makeup. They had the lipstick that she wore on the show, and they had tubes of it in the show for set dressing and things like that. They made specific merchandise and collections. So one of the things in my Agent Carter cabinet is that makeup, which we were incredibly lucky to get. But the other thing you do get is you get fans coming up and seeing that opportunity, and then you get some brilliant things being made by fan creators that they see the lull in the market, they want these things, or maybe they made it for themselves and somebody said, oh, I love that, where did you get it? And they've just seen that opportunity, and suddenly we've got this incredible fan made community of merchandise coming out.
Yeah, I've seen that happen a few times before for other shows that don't get released. And funnily enough, the Vile has made a mention about there wasn't a lot of Babu Frick merchandise character from Rise of Skywalker. You are right. Yeah, and you are right. Some of the stuff that gets produced can be quite good. And with that in mind, I mean, I was going to mention this later on, but if you're ever on eBay, now this is just an example, right? So you can do this with a whole lot of other things. But Argentina, there's a company in Argentina. I don't even know who they are, but they produce all their own stuff, and it's all unofficial. It's all probably a bit on the dodgy side. But as an example, oh, sorry, wrong picture. I'm going to be on my side. There we go. Sorry. This is for V, right? For those who remember the V, the series from the 1980s, and they produce all their own merchandise over there. And because if you know you're getting from Argentina, you know they're manufacturing it themselves. But if you don't mind the fact that it's coming from, it's not official, it's just effectively fan made, then you can actually pick up some really, really groovy things, providing you're aware that there's no value to it. Realistically, you can't try and pass it off as legitimate merchandise. And I understand where you're coming from, because I was a fan of a TV series or a mini series called The Lost Room, and there were some fans out there who actually produced their own merchandise for The Lost Room, and I picked up a couple of items for that. And it's neat. It fills a little gap in the collecting market, where if they produce tens of thousands of items, nobody would buy them. But if they just, like, fans get together, as you said, with the Agent Carter stuff, it can be really, really groovy. So that can be very, very cool. And other people will see that and go, "Oh, where did you get that?" Thinking you bought it from a store or something. No, it was all produced in house. So very, very groovy. Rod has mentioned vintage stuff. He only buys for certain years. Well, that's a good point. I mean, being able to control, I think, what it is you purchase and when you purchase is very, very cool. And so, in other words, you're one of those people who don't get exploited by the manufacturers who just pump this stuff out. And as Aaron, who's on the show now, will attest, Star Wars is really big for that. They'll re-release action figures again and again and again, the retro series and this and that. And I mean, it's like a cash-in, because they're using the original molds, they're using the original pictures, and it's just a modern version of it. And the only reason for doing that is to try and make a few dollars. And so from your perspective, is that the kind of thing you just make, you're like, oh, that is so annoying? But you know that other people out there will just be spending all this money on this stuff that really is just completely worthless. What are your thoughts?
Look, at the end of the day, things are only worth what someone's willing to pay for them. And that's the golden rule of collecting, that, anything's only worth what you're willing to pay. And that's how you end up with, people that collect stamps and, baseball cards, and those things go for thousands of dollars, and they are just tiny little bits of paper. And there's no actual value. The value is assigned by us, by deciding that we love that thing and we want to preserve and collect it. But yes, when things are just being produced en masse just for the sake of it, there's that feeling of sadness when you look at it and you go, this is all just going to end up in landfill. Like, it's one thing when it ends up in a beautifully curated collection and somebody clearly loves it, but it's another thing when it is just one stop. It's going to be given to somebody who's not going to like it. They're going to throw it in the bin, and that is just straight to landfill.
I'm going to give you two examples of that. Now, these don't fit into pop culture, but when these were produced, and people have forgotten about these things already, right? When these came out, I thought, mate, these are just going to get thrown out. And there was a huge, and I'll show the picture in a sec. When these came out, people were just going nuts over, oh, I've got to buy this, got to buy that. It's the latest hot thing, without realizing that 2, 4, 5, 6 years down the track, they would end up in landfill. And for those who may or may not remember it, it's the miniature grocery things from Coles, all right? And of course, the irony being that they produced tiny products of the original thing, because you could just buy the original thing and be done with it, right? And it became a really, really big collector market for this for a period of time. Do you remember when these came out?
Yes, I still have a few of them. I think I have a little Vegemite and a little a cup of noodles somewhere.
Oh yeah, good on you. And I looked at this and I thought, mate, that's complete rubbish. I mean, it's obviously designed to fill a short-term fix for people to say, oh, let's go and get these things. They're going to be great, but there'd be no value to these whatsoever. But the one that topped it even further, and I was astounded when this came out, was when Woolworths produced their own Lego sets. Now, as I understand it, they're not officially Lego. They're their own design, their own variation. So I'm assuming they don't fit with real Lego. But I looked at this when this was all coming out, and this was admittedly during the lockdown, so I guess it kept people entertained. But I suspect all this is going to end up in landfill down the track at some point. So what do you think?
I have to shamefully say that I have collected both of those lines. Even though I'm selective and I try to be good, it's just something about once they give you those little bags and you get to open them up and find out what's in them, suddenly you're in it. You're collecting and you can't help yourself. I have so many Ushies. That's the other one that was everywhere for a little while, the Woolworths Ushies. And they are just They are worthless pieces of garbage. They have no value. They have no reason to be collected. But there is just something about that little dopamine hit of ripping open the bag and seeing what did we get, and the fact that they were free gift with purchase. They were actually very brilliant. They were brilliant marketing. They're terrible for the environment. It was much better when Woolworths did that promotion, which was little plants and little biodegradable planters. That was a much better way of doing it because it fulfilled that same collecting urge, but they were completely biodegradable. A much better way of doing it. But yeah, unfortunately, we all get sucked into some stupid things sometimes, and I was in that particular case.
That's okay. I mean, you've still got them now. I'm willing to bet that 10 years from now, 2032, they'll be out on hard rubbish, and sure enough, they'll end up in the ground somewhere. So, yes.
They'll be in the $2 bin at Aaron's Collectibles.
Yes, and you know what? They'll stay there forever. I have to give them away for free. So I'm way behind on the comments. So Aaron made a point about saying how book-related franchises have longer lives than movie, which is fair enough. I mean, obviously, books or book series tend to go longer as well, decade after decade. So that makes a lot of sense. There was now, as I said, I'm behind in the comments. So Bob has meant there are far too many variations of the same molding casting in the market. Well, the reason why they do a lot of it is obviously purely cost factors. So if you've got all the molds and you go, and a few years have passed, let's just do a reissue of something and give it a different paint job, maybe in a new packet, and then pass it off as whatever. And of course, everything comes in cycles. So currently, Batman is big at the moment with the new movie that's coming out, and I would not be surprised if there's a new range of Batman action figures come out based on the molds taken 30 years ago, purely because it's a price-saving thing. And as we mentioned with Star Wars, I mean, they do it on a regular basis with all these characters that they just reproduce because they know that people out there will buy them. So, yeah, I can sort of, be prepared for kids because it's how the system works. And, anyway, so what do you reckon?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were going to ask me a question.
That's all right. Yeah, merchandising where they put their movies, put their name on everything. Exactly right. So, all right, I'm way behind in the thing here. So we're talking about like the Woolworths Lego thing at the moment. Now there is one collectible franchise that is just like mind blowing at the best of times, and that is obviously Lego itself. And whenever Lego buys a license for something, say in this case Star Wars, and I think they have Harry Potter too, if I'm not mistaken, or Lord of the Rings.
They have everything.
They do, and I guess that's one thing. So we're experiencing technical difficulties. Hang on, what have you got?
Tiny little Captain Carter. It was
well, there you go.
Bag that I bought. Speaking of blind bags, I went through many blind bags. I don't think it's going to focus. Went through many blind bags to get this little Captain Carter. So yes, I know the Lego. Lego has everything, every license.
Absolutely love it. And just it's very funny. What I was going to say is that because the funny thing I find just with Lego, just as a slight aside, is that a lot of collectible items these days are clearly aimed at the adult audience, right? Because the adults are the ones with the money, not the kids. Now, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the kids were the focal point. Now, people have realized, oh, no, it's the adults with the money. So let's produce Lego sets of $1,000 that fans are going to go completely apeshit over. And there was a comment earlier, and I did miss it, about how they produce things in small numbers to increase the value. So did Lego, with Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, etc., did you ever sort of go down that path at all?
I've avoided big Lego sets because I just always think when I get something big, where is that going to go once I build it? So I do know a lot of people that have gone down that Lego rabbit hole and got those wonderful big collections and those huge builds. They're stunning, and they would be so much fun to put together. But personally, I've stuck to just little minifigs and little mini sets, just because again, it's much easier to display.
Totally agree, and I think I do find it interesting because Lego, for the most part, is meant to be a children's toy, and it's gone way beyond that. So, but I mean, all power to them. They produce it, they make it, and it goes down. It's very, very popular and good luck to them. The other one I find is interesting, and I've got no pictures of it, and we barely even touch on it at all, even though it's slightly skewed off the pop culture thing, is the Barbie franchise. I remember vividly, you'd go to Toys R Us, and you'd have one aisle that was just pure pink. Now, for those who don't know, Barbie pink is a registered color. So it's not just a random pink, it's an actual pink. And the collectible side for Barbie is enormous. They have entire conventions devoted to Barbie collecting. I've even got a friend of mine who makes clothes for Barbie dolls, and they would actually produce Barbie figures that were not designed to come out of their packets. They were like surgically implanted in there, so no matter which way you turned it up, the dresses and all the rest of it looked fantastic. And they would say, don't even, it's like a surgical operation to try and get it out. And I found that really, really fascinating, yet a lot of people seem to not sort of discuss it, probably because, as I said, it's away from the pop culture thing. So is that something you've ever come across in your travels? I mean, I know you're probably not into the Barbie side of things, but what are your thoughts on the whole franchise?
I literally have a David Bowie Barbie sitting above my desk watching over me. So yes, look, Barbies, I played with Barbies as a child, like many little girls. So Barbie will always have a special place for me. Hell, I'm even wearing Barbie branded eyeshadow today. That's was a collectible makeup. So that's a little bit of crossover. Makeup also is collectible. If you weren't aware of that, I have so much of it from lockdown. There was not much to do during lockdown except buy things. But yeah, dolls that are specifically made for the adult market, they are out there. And I remember coming across them for the first time as a child. One of my early internet experiences, I remember going on the Barbie website. I used to love going on the Barbie website and just looking at all the Barbies they had for sale. And most of the ones they had online, because online wasn't really that kid-friendly a space back then, they were for adult collectors, and they were ones that were never to be taken out of the box and never played with. I didn't understand that. I just thought they were pretty. I didn't understand why they were so expensive. But Barbie has a fascinating background, and I actually, if you haven't watched the series Toys That Made Us on Netflix, I definitely recommend watching the Barbie episode, because it is fantastic. The fact that she was originally based on a novelty doll of a lewd German comic. She when she tried to go to meetings and show this product off, the prototype off, they laughed her out of the room, and then it became this absolute sensation. And one of my favorites, the time they beat Gem and the Holograms to market by just days by coming out with a Barbie Rockstar line, which basically killed Gem and the Holograms before it even had a chance to shine.
So what would happen, say, Liz, in your case, if they really did mesh? And I know they dabble on it from time to time, so with Barbie sort of mixing with Star Trek and a couple of other franchises, but they don't really cross-pollinate for the most part. But if they did produce a full Harry Potter range or Lord of the Rings range of Barbie figures, where, I don't know, Bowie's Eowyn or something like that, and Ken's Aragorn or whatever. I don't know. I mean, that's a real bizarre mishmash of genres and franchises. But does that mean that suddenly you'd have to head down that path?
Oh, I'd be in danger. I'd be in a huge amount of danger if that happened. As it is, I've just got a couple here and there. So I've got a Lady Gaga Monster High doll, which is Barbie adjacent. They're both Mattel. And then I've got my David Bowie Barbie. And there are other dolls I've got. I've got some Star Wars Legends of Heroes of the Resistance or Rebellion. Can't remember the exact name of the line, but I've got a few of them. And they are very much sculpted to look like Barbies. They're not actually Barbies. But if they did come out with a full line of Barbie, Avengers women or something like that, I would be in so much danger.
I can't help but imagine the whole Barbie Agent Carter sort of line would just be right up your alley. So, there we go. Anybody watching this show who wants to sort of manufacture that stuff, you've certainly got a purchaser out there already. Funnily enough, I'm miles behind the comments. So, Rod has made a mention he'd buy Fanview merchandise. Well, if he just runs upstairs, he can get an autographed picture from you. So that's pretty good. So I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly. Colin's made a point about the fear of loss factor has been used as a sales technique throughout time. Yeah, well, as I said, a lot of companies got burnt pretty badly in the past, and I think a lot of them now are kind of scared to produce merchandise, even on films and TV shows that are massively successful. There we go. Let's have a look. Manufacturers make pay landfill. Hang on, what was that? Manufacturers should maybe aid to landfill for clogging up the place. Well, yes. Well, unfortunately, that's unfortunately the case. Yes, about stuff ending up in landfill, and yes, never a good thing. Aaron's asked, what do you think about habitual collectors, where the franchises change or may no longer be as popular, but you're still collecting from habit? What do you think about that?
I think that that's a very dangerous thing. I do understand that for a lot of people, collecting it becomes a hobby in its own right. It's no longer so much about their fandom. It's about them collecting because they love to collect. But to me, it's the same as last week. No, the week before when we were talking about cosplay, and I was talking about how, for me, I don't really think it's great to cosplay things if you're not personally a fan. In the same way, I don't think it's really worth collecting if you're not personally a fan of it. So I did see things like that when the new series of Star Wars came out, for instance, the newest Star Wars movies. I saw lots of people that were still buying everything, collecting everything, while complaining and saying that they hated the character of Rey, they hated Rose, they hated Finn, Poe, they hated the characters, but they were still buying the merchandise. And it's just one of those things that's like, why do that to yourself? You're encouraging more production of that merchandise by buying it. So it's supply and demand. If you buy it, they will make more. So if you don't want to see it, don't buy it.
It's a very good point. Actually, that goes into what Tari mentioned about the worst thing is when fans fill the gap. And so, in other words, fans produce their own merchandise, and then the people who officially make merchandise go after the fans going, oh, you can't do that. The trick to that is if you're going to produce your own merchandise for a licensed product, you don't produce a lot of it, right? And this goes right back to when eBay first started. And I was well aware of this in the 1990s. People were producing their own Star Wars merchandise, and they're trying to sell it on eBay, for example. You can't really do that if you're looking at a broad market, because then you are going to be potentially getting the wrath of the licensees, especially if you're producing thousands upon thousands of units. So typically what happens is, and you might have experienced this with the Agent Carter thing, fans will get together, produce the merchandise, but only offer it in limited numbers to just selected people. They won't go out and like do big web pages and go, this is where you can get this stuff. If it's not licensed, that's when, yes, you'll have the powers that be coming to stamp down on you. So it is a bit of a...
There was an example of that was in the cosplay, the Agent Carter cosplay scene. There were certain vendors that made things for the show that if you contacted them directly and said code words that had been decided on in the fan groups, then you could get that merchandise. But they didn't have it listed on their website. They didn't have it listed for sale because they were just trying to avoid those lawsuits. But it was still available. It's still there. You just need to know where to look sometimes.
Yeah. So if you are going to be producing your own merchandise, don't tell the whole planet you've produced a run of 38 million of them. We'll definitely get in a strife over that. But I do agree with you, Tari. If you definitely just kept it small and unique, then you should be able to just get away with it, because in the end, it's not hurting anybody. It's certainly not hurting the pockets of the powers that be. Just going right back to an earlier discussion, Colin's made a mention about the people who were critical of collecting were going nuts for those Coles minis. Well, it's, you know why? Because it tapped into a psyche that they weren't even aware of. Even though you could buy the full size product, probably even cheaper. I mean, and leave it mint packet, if you will, in its condition. And you go, well, why do you need the mini version when you can just buy the full size? Oh, no, it didn't make sense. With that in mind, we're going to be finishing up in a few ticks. What are your thoughts about the whole leave it in the packet, take it out of the packet scenario? I mean, some people think one way, some people think another. What do you think?
I think it's personal preference. So if you're planning to, if you bought something that you're not sure you're going to keep, and you've got it for now, but you're probably going to pass it on at some point. You just have it for a little while. Probably keep it in the box because that's going to maintain the value. But if you are collecting because you love it and you want to display it, if it looks better out of the box, take it out of the box. Like half my pop vinyls are out of their boxes. I've got like my little Jeff Goldblum who watches me work, as he's a very distinguished gentleman. But why would I keep that in the box? My pop vinyls I mostly keep in the box because it's easier to display them, because the boxes are so small already, and it's easy to just put them there. Don't have to worry about dusting them as much. But there are things that just take them out. Just take them out of the box. Just enjoy them.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I had a pop vinyl collection, I'd certainly take them out of the box so I could park my car on the top of them to jack it up to change the wheels. Same as Aaron has done with his Jodie Whittaker Barbie. So, that's a bit of an in-joke. Tari's mentioned about displaying big things are hard. It's kind of funny because people have asked me about collecting advice. And I said, the irony being is that you could have a $20,000 stamp collection sitting on one bookshelf, right? You remember stamps, back in the old days? Whereas if you get $20,000 of like play sets, you need like 3 bedrooms. So yes, displaying big items are hard, but for that reason, they can actually increase in value because they are so difficult to keep mint and box for decade after decade, because they just take up so much space. So exactly right.
My dear partner has an Eternia box set, which is one of the biggest play sets. It was from Masters of the Universe, the cartoons in the 80s, and it is one of the biggest play sets ever produced. He's got one of the only ones in Australia, and it is huge, and we don't know where to display it. It's just one of those things.
Make a coffee table out of it. Dean has joined us, and he's made mention about model kits. Now, model kits is a funny one because obviously, by definition, a model kit is a bit like a Lego set. Yeah, it is designed to be assembled, but as a collectible, is it best left in the box unassembled? And it's almost like it's crying shame to have to do that. But depending on what it is, sometimes you kind of, that's what needs to be done. So, yeah, I don't know, Dean, that's a tough one, dude. But I think if you love building them, go ahead and build them. Sorry?
Unless you're buying them to curate as a museum and keep in storage, so some day, 1,000 years from now, somebody can look at them and see them. Just take them out of the box and play with them. That's if they are, unless they are a vintage figure that's already survived this long, leave that in the box. But something new, just buy it and play with it.
Very, very cool. Daniel's made a point. He's lost the sound, so we can't speak in sign language, but we just do dollar signs because effectively that's what all this show is all about. So yes, you are right, Tara. Yes, about the licensees going after anything, and you're right. And they'll probably do have people who have algorithms that search the internet looking for products with their license name on it. I can imagine that being the case, and you're right. As soon as someone makes something, they get clamped down. It is a bit unfair and a bit. Just settle down, kids. It's not that big a deal, but there you go. Now, we're actually now got to wrap up, believe it or not, which is particularly, there's a lot of things we could obviously discuss. If you are interested and you didn't know this already, not you, Sarah, but the people watching the show, on Wednesday nights, Aaron and myself do a series called Rip It Off the Card, where we actually talk about pop culture collecting. It's a 2-hour live show, but the main presentation topic is usually in the second hour. So if you haven't seen that before, be sure to check it out. You can learn something new about everything that's going on. And next week, it's our second last episode. And what we'll be discussing is actually the power of the Force. Are the best years of Star Wars still ahead of it? So a lot of people would say, no, definitely not. But if you look at the history of the other two big sci-fi franchises, Star Trek and Doctor Who, they are actually still doing really, really well. And are still producing really, really good material. So you could argue that the classic years, or as popular as they are, may not necessarily be the best years. Who knows? Something to discuss and see how we go. Christy has made a mention that it needs to be longer. We want more. I know it's part of our ethos not to keep rambling on to all hours of the night. Rod said, Fan View Season 2. Oh, golly, wally. So, yes.
He's biased.
Yeah, exactly right. Good stuff. All right, so we're going to buzz off. Sorry we didn't get to all the comments, but it's good that people have sort of enjoyed the show and had a lot to say. Everybody's a collector out there. Go out there, buy some stuff, and absolutely enjoy it. Put it away. And I know your collection, Sarah, looks absolutely fantastic, except for the pops. You can chuck those out the window. Everything else, though, is pretty, really cool. Rod, as you said, has got some awesome things as well. So well done to both of you. Anything you want to say before we finish up?
No, I'm just looking forward to next week discussing Grey Jedi.
Good stuff. All right, we'll leave you to a party hard, rock on, and we will see you all next week. Okay, bye for now.
Bye.